Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Aylwood and today we are looking at Viviette, yet another game by DYA Games, and to answer the ultimate question, is it worth your time? So, Viviette is a single player, indie, pixel art, exploration, horror puzzle game, where you play as some guy stuck in a mansion somewhere and will need to explore the mansion's grounds and buildings to find out what's going on. You'll be tackling diverse puzzles, avoiding your crazy possessed sister, and backtracking like no tomorrow. So, aesthetically the game is of course 16-bit inspired due to its design, as per all DYA Games' games, giving it that retro feel, except with much higher quality designs and much smoother feel of gameplay. Colours used are overall very dark and dull to give the game that consistent dark and eerie feel that brings out the old and dusty look of the mansion very well. Textures and detail are very impressive actually, and instead of the devs just making tile sets and creating areas out of them, you can see they took a lot of care and love making each room completely different with general furniture, wall designs and ornaments. Each room has been touched up very well with the odd broken floor tile, stained carpet and rusty metal to give very unappreciated immersive touches to the game that I really do love. This coupled with all the ominous statues, paintings and dolls around the place bring out the menacing yet lonely atmosphere to the mansion very well. Very big focus on lighting effects in this game of course, as your lantern is a very important item that you will be needing at all times. The lantern flickers often and gives subtle changes to how it gives off light every now and again to add to the subtle dread of the game. This quality of lighting combined with the dust specks floating around and the occasional environmental lighting give the game a very high quality feel that you can see a lot of care was taken in the design of it. The UI is non-existent, which is always nice to maximise immersion. Level layouts are very nice, not too big or too small. You can tell the devs really enjoyed mapping out the level designs when making the game. Everything outside the manor, however, I found was way too big and spread out for me, but fortunately I got over it pretty quickly. Character designs are also just as high quality as everything else in the game. Each character is given a very glossy, kind of light effect sprite when stationary, which obviously looks very good when you have a lantern in your hand, but sprites without a lantern look a little bit out of place due to this very dramatic effect. Not exactly a bad thing, just a little bit unusual I thought. Everything else visually speaking was made to a very high, consistent standard. The OSTs in Viviette are brilliant, very drawn out, powerful, in-your-face orchestral sounds with the odd old-fashioned sound effect here and there. This brings out the fear, tension and anticipation very well, while also relating to the old-fashioned theme of the game. Due to the oil lanterns everywhere, old rowboat and old-fashioned hospital you start in, the game must be set somewhere in the late 1800s because the soundtracks relate to this very well. The eerie exploration soundtracks transition very well to the chase OSTs and keep you on your toes while wandering around the mansion corridors. Certain parts of the mansion appear to have their own set of different soundtracks to keep the fear varied and fresh as you're progressing the game. Overall, a very high soundtrack quality, I have to admit. Not quite as good or as scary as Resident Evil soundtracks, but any scarier, the soundtracks wouldn't fit the actual gameplay as well as they have, so overall a very good job. Other sound effects like footsteps, doors opening and character sounds are all very high quality and add to the overall immersion very well. Your character's panting though, I'll go into later. Now for the gameplay. So Viviette firstly does have a few difficulty options to choose from before you play. This however I feel isn't a very accurate representation of the game's difficulty. Instead I feel they should have named them very easy and normal mode. I personally completed the whole game on normal mode, but I did have a quick go of hard mode to see the difference. The only thing I noticed was the woman chasing you around throughout the game is harder to push away on hard than on normal. That's it. I'm not being funny, but if you can press 3 keys on your keyboard with relative ease quickly, you may as well jump straight on the hard mode because it really isn't that hard. So when you first start the game, you're given a very interesting opening cutscene to explain the game's story. As I mentioned, you play as a man named Jules. You, your sister and some friends decide to go on a boat trip to visit a mansion in the middle of the woods somewhere. Your sister starts acting up and you all decide to leave. You fall unconscious, wake up sometime after sunset, and you find all your friends and your sister have gone missing, thus starting your Viviette journey. So once you're done with all your settings, difficulty and cutscenes, you can take control of your character and play. As Viviette is an exploration horror puzzle game, expect plenty of exploration and puzzles while potentially being scared. So in a nutshell, the main objective is to search each room of the mansion for clues, you solve puzzles, sometimes associated with these three things, and progress further and further into the mansion's inaccessible areas until you find out what's really going on. You have your general movement keys as you'd expect, with the addition of a run button, lantern toggle, and your inventory. Key items are added to your unlimited storage space bag upon pickup, and items have to be used directly from your inventory. When an item has no further use, it does stay in your inventory, which can put you off a bit when attempting to solve the puzzles. As I mentioned earlier, your character will start to pant if you hold the run button for too long. This, however, has no effect whatsoever on the gameplay. I suppose it's a nice touch from an immersive sound perspective, but when you find out there's actually no point to it, it does ruin the immersion aspect of it and becomes annoying more than anything. A very big opportunity missed there, sadly. Overall, the game is kinda like a 2D pixel art Resident Evil game, except instead of zombies and monsters, you've got your knife-wielding possessed sister to deal with instead. But don't worry, she is a pretty laughable threat. She is very easy to dodge and even easier to push off. To be honest, I'd be more scared of the mansion breeze outside the upstairs window if I were you. While playing, you obviously don't have any kind of weapon, skills or level up system, which would be pointless anyway. While on your journey, you don't get any company at all either, which does bring out that lonely, isolation feel of gameplay. Other than your not so scary sister scaring the shit out of you, you also have the occasional jump scare here and there. These jump scares aren't exactly scary though, but do cause a somewhat small shock when they do occur. Everything else gameplay related is pretty self-explanatory, but expect a somewhat deep story, annoying puzzles to deal with, and your sister just fumbling around the mansion doing her own thing. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? The game is very well polished, has stunning pixel art and brilliant OSTs, but the overall gameplay is very lackluster and the horror aspect just isn't there. I'm going to give this game a 3.5 star or 66 out of 100. Yes, I know, a very harsh score, I know. I do feel bad for giving it, but for those of you that watch my reviews, you already know. I'm not here to talk shit or blow sunshine up your ass, I'm here to tell you how it is. And unfortunately, although a lot of care, love and attention to detail went into the development of Viviette, I feel the raw gameplay really lets it down. And at the end of the day, true gaming experience comes from the gameplay. Graphics and soundtracks do of course contribute to the quality of a game, but it's the act of execution being the whole point of playing a game. The game's main antagonist is not scary at all and is pretty much pointless in terms of challenge provided. Objects of actual interest are hard to notice and don't stand out at all. When examining objects after they jump scare you, you have no difference in text, which ruins the immersion. Your character panting is completely pointless from a gameplay perspective. Certain puzzles are very buggy and reset if you get one input wrong, and the fact that the whole horror experience is mainly provided by your weaker, shorter female sibling. I'm not being funny, but if a possessed girl came at me with a knife, regardless if I were a 16-bit character or not, being a broad-looking man, I'm sure I wouldn't have any problem disarming her. If the devs put in a few tiny 2-second cutscenes that demonstrate her with superhuman strength, like smashing a statue or breaking down a door, then fair enough, that's actually convincing. I feel there are a lot of very small missed opportunities in this game that would have made the game amazing. The demonstration of your sister's superhuman strength is one. If they made it so all actual points of interest in the game have some sort of visual effect, similar to the save books except at 5% speed, or at least stand out slightly more than everything else. They could have made it so if your character is lightly panting, you just barely push your sister off, and if you're heavy panting, you're guaranteed to be one shot. They could have made it so you can't run indefinitely and are forced to walk to recharge your stamina. The puzzle should have had one solution from the start that never changes, or at least generated solutions the moment you start a new game instead of randomizing when you fail. This happened for me on both the graveyard and the flame statue puzzle, which was very annoying. And finally, they should have made hard mode a guaranteed game over the moment your sister grabs you, without giving you the ability to push her off. Look at the game Ao Oni for example. Nowhere near as high quality or as polished as Viviette, but that game is actually fucking scary, and I haven't even played it before. So to conclude, Viviette is overall an extremely well made game, but I feel DYA games didn't quite hit the horror aspect on the head and tiptoed around the idea of it instead. It's a very big shame the high quality development of the game has gone to waste a bit, and due to the reasons mentioned, I personally wouldn't recommend it. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I'll be reviewing each week, and I'm still waiting for some fucking game requests from you guys. The last request was Apex Legends, and that was months ago. But as always, all the best guys, take care.